The Outcast of Velexia. The sky above Velexia was cold and gray. Sharp winds moved through broken towers and shattered machines. Long ago, this place was a busy trade post. Now it was only a graveyard of old metal and forgotten dreams. Serani lived here. She stayed hidden under a curved piece of a broken ship, deep in the scrap fields. Her body, large and strong, made it hard to hide. But she had learned how to move quietly. She didn't want to be seen, not by the patrols, not by her people, not by anyone. Serani was born different. On Velexia, most girls were tall and slim, with smooth, shining skin. They danced, they learned science, they became leaders. But Serani was taller. Her muscles were thick. Her skin had strong ridges that grew over time. The elders called her oversized. The others called her ugly. At first, she tried to be kind. She studied hard. She offered help. But the laughter never stopped. The mocking grew worse. One day, when she tried to join a science trial, the leaders made their decision. They told her to leave. They said she was too large, too strange, too dangerous. They pushed her out of the city gates and closed them behind her. That was 5 cycles ago. Now she lived alone. She built small things from the trash: solar heaters, light traps, and sound alarms. She hunted wild rats and cleaned dirty water. She had no mirror, but she still remembered how they looked at her before. Sometimes she would touch her arms and wonder what was so wrong with them. But the wind would blow, and the cold would return, and she would remember there was no one left to ask. Then, one morning, everything changed. A loud noise came from the sky. It was not thunder. It was not one of the patrol ships. This sound was sharp and wild, like something was breaking apart. Serani looked up and saw fire cutting through the clouds. A small ship was falling, fast. She followed it. The ship crashed far from her shelter, near a broken hill of twisted metal. Smoke rose into the sky. Serani moved quickly. Her large feet left deep marks in the sand, but no one was watching. When she reached the wreck, she stopped. The ship was badly damaged. One side was crushed. Pieces of metal were still hot. She waited, listening. Then she heard it. A voice. A soft, weak cry. She moved closer and looked inside. Her breath caught. It was not a Velexian. It was a human. He was small, pale, and covered in cuts. Blood ran down the side of his face. He was strapped to a broken seat, wires around his chest. His hand twitched. He was alive, but barely. Serani had never seen a human before, but she had read about them. She had found old data pads in the junk fields. They were explorers, traders, and dreamers. They traveled far, sometimes too far. Some stories said they were kind. Others said they were dangerous. She looked at the man. He looked weak, helpless. She could leave him. She should leave him. If the patrols found her helping a human, they would hunt her down. But then he groaned again, and his head fell to the side. His eyes opened for a moment. They met hers, and he didn't scream. Serani didn't move. Her heart beat fast. He looked at her face, her size, her ridged arms, and he still didn't scream. His eyes closed again. His body sagged. She made a choice. Serani pulled the human from the seat. He was light in her arms. She carried him through secret paths she had dug under the junk. Long ago, she made them to hide from the patrols. Now, they were saving a life. Her cave was dark and warm. She placed the human on a soft bed made of old blankets. She cleaned his wounds with water and herbs. She didn't know human medicine, but she knew how to stop bleeding. She used what she had. Hours passed. The human slept. Serani sat near the entrance, watching the smoke in the distance. Would someone come? Would they search for him? Would they find her? Later, the human stirred. His eyes opened slowly. He looked around, confused. Then he saw her. Serani didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just waited. He looked at her again. She was big, strange, scared, and silent. But he didn't run. Instead, he gave a weak nod. And in that moment, something small and warm lit up inside her chest. He didn't laugh. He didn't push her away. For the first time in her life, someone looked at her and didn't turn away. The silent protector. The cave was quiet, except for the soft sound of wind outside and the slow, rough breathing of the human. Serani sat beside the entrance, her large frame barely moving. Her sharp eyes stayed fixed on the human as he lay still, resting on a bed made from scrap blankets, dried moss, and soft wires. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm now. She had cleaned his wounds, covered the deep gash on his forehead with a band of fabric, and warmed the cave with a solar heater she built long ago from broken parts. Outside, Valexian patrols still flew over the junk fields, but she had made sure to cover the cave's entrance with thick panels and scrap, blending it into the land. She had saved him, but she still didn't know why. The human moved again. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the soft blue light coming from a cracked energy orb on the wall. He tried to sit up, but pain made him groan. Serani leaned forward. Her large hand gently touched his shoulder, guiding him to lie back down. "Don't move," she said softly. Her voice was deep and rough from years of not using it. He looked at her, surprised to hear her speak, but he didn't speak back. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he didn't understand her words. He seemed to study her face, her sharp ridges, her wide shoulders, her strange shape. He looked longer than anyone else ever had. And still, no fear, no disgust, just curiosity. Serani stood and walked to a corner of the cave. She grabbed a small bowl filled with warm broth she made using roots and herbs. She offered it to him. He took it slowly, his hand shaking, and drank it all. He gave a small, thankful nod. That simple motion, just a nod, hit her harder than she expected. It had been years since anyone thanked her. Days passed. The human grew stronger. He spoke in a soft, broken way. Some words she understood, some she didn't. His voice was low and gentle. He smiled sometimes. Serani never smiled back, but something in her chest shifted each time he did. She watched him closely. When he tried to stand, she helped him. When he fell, she lifted him without effort. When he asked questions, she answered with simple words or quiet drawings on a cracked wall panel. His name, she learned, was Jace. He was from a trade vessel that had taken the wrong route near Valexian space. Pirates had attacked. His ship was damaged. He escaped in a small pod, but it was hit during his fall. He hadn't expected to survive. Jace was a traveler. He had seen many planets, but none, he said, were like Valexia. His voice turned dark when he spoke about it. How the skies seemed unfriendly, how the air felt too sharp, how the people he saw from above looked cold. Serani said nothing when he spoke like this. She had lived that truth. Over time, Jace noticed her mind. He watched how she built things, small machines that tracked weather, lights that ran on sound, and filters that cleaned poison from air. One day, he pointed at a glowing orb above them and said, "You're a genius." Serani turned away, but she remembered the words all night. Later, when he asked how she knew these things, she finally told him. Once she had been the top student in the Academy of Sciences. She had built her first solar trap at the age of 7. The elders had praised her, until her body began to change. Her size grew faster than the others. Her skin thickened. She became what they called unfit. Slowly, she was removed from the council halls, banned from labs, and finally sent away. Jace listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask questions like, "Why didn't you fight?" or "Why didn't you run?" Instead, he just sat beside her in silence. After a while, he looked at her again and said something simple. They lost something special. Those words stayed with her. Nights grew colder. The patrols flew lower. One evening, Serani saw a red light blink in the sky, something she had seen only once before, a search signal. They were looking for Jace, and if they found him here, they would not only take him, they would destroy everything, including her. But Serani didn't leave. She watched Jace sleep that night, curled near the heat lamp, one hand resting over a small datapad he had been trying to repair. He trusted her now, and she realized she trusted him too. She had been alone for so long. She forgot what trust felt like, what warmth felt like. And now, for the first time in her life, she was afraid. Not of pain, not of being hunted. She was afraid of losing this. Hunted for helping. The night air was colder than usual, and the winds carried whispers of danger. Serani stood outside the cave, her tall figure still, her sharp eyes scanning the jump-covered hills. The searchlights were back. This time, they came closer. They moved slowly across the sky, flickering through the darkness like eyes full of suspicion. The sound of the patrol ships echoed through the scrap fields, bouncing off rusted metal and forgotten machines. She had heard that sound many times before, but tonight, it meant something different. They were searching for Jace. He was awake now, walking slowly with help, eating more, asking questions. Every day, he became stronger. Every day, he smiled a little more. He tried fixing his datapad, using tools Serani gave him. Sometimes he laughed when he made mistakes. Serani didn't laugh, but she stayed close. She found herself waiting for his voice. When he spoke, her cave felt less empty. But now, the search had begun. They must have picked up the crash signal. Maybe they saw smoke. Maybe they found the remains of the pod. Whatever it was, it meant the piece was over. Serani knew what the Valexians would do if they found him. They wouldn't ask questions. They wouldn't show mercy. He was human. He didn't belong here, and anyone helping him would be punished. She didn't care what they would do to her. They had already taken everything. Her home, her place in society, her dreams. What more could they take? But she did care about him. She stepped back into the cave. Jace looked up from the corner, where he had laid out pieces of a broken signal beacon. "They're close, aren't they?" he asked quietly. Serani nodded. Her face was calm, but her heart was loud. She pointed toward the back of the cave, to a narrow tunnel hidden behind a wall of metal scraps. "Follow me," she said. They walked in silence through the passage. The tunnel was tight for her, but she had carved it years ago, thinking one day she might need to disappear. It twisted through the hills, leading to a deeper part of the junk fields, where the wreckage was piled high and the wind screamed between the metal walls. They reached an old shelter, half a broken ship, half a dugout bunker. Inside, Serani had hidden one of her biggest secrets, a transport shell. Long ago, she had found its broken body buried under 10 feet of garbage. She had repaired it slowly over the years, piece by piece, not knowing why. Maybe she hoped to escape someday. Maybe she just wanted to fix something that wasn't herself. Jace stared at it, eyes wide. "You built this." "Fixed it," she said. "Not ready yet." He walked around it, touching the sides gently. The ship was old, but its core still glowed with power. It could fly, maybe not far, but far enough to get him away. "We could finish this," he said, "together." Serani looked at him. For a moment, something warm stirred inside her, hope, but it faded quickly. "They will find us soon," she said. "We need to move." Jace stepped closer. "Then let's finish it now." And so they began. For days, they worked side by side. Serani taught Jace how to power the engine, how to clean the wires, how to patch the hull. Jace, in return, shared his knowledge of human systems, connecting old tech with new tricks. They worked through storms. They worked through silence. And during those quiet hours, Jace began to speak more about his life. He told her about Earth, about the sky that turned orange at sunset, about the ocean and how it smelled different from any other world, about how, on his first day at the academy, he had felt small and scared, just like she once had. "You would love the forests," he said one night, as they sat near a heating coil. "No one cares what size you are there. Everything grows tall, wild, beautiful." Serani didn't answer, but her eyes stayed on him a little longer. Then one evening, as the last panel on the ship was locked into place, a sharp sound broke through the wind. A drone. Serani turned first. She pushed Jace behind the wreckage and looked up. The drone hovered above, its red light blinking. It had seen them. Without a word, she grabbed a pipe and threw it with full force. The drone cracked and spun, sparks flying, but not before it flashed once. It had sent a signal. Serani's chest tightened. They had only minutes now. Jace looked at her. "What do we do?" She took a breath. "We run." And as they climbed into the transport shell, as the engine gave its first deep hum, Serani looked at the sky and knew something had changed. She wasn't just protecting him anymore. She was fighting for something, for someone. The Council's judgment. The halls of the Valexian High Council were colder than the wind outside. Tall columns of glass and metal stretched into the ceiling, and the floor gleamed like frozen stone. 7 figures sat in silence, each wrapped in silver robes, faces half covered by ceremonial masks. Behind them, a large display screen showed flickering images, footage from the drone that had been destroyed near the junk fields. The screen showed a human, wounded but alive. It also showed someone else, tall, broad, unmistakable. Serani, the one they had cast out years ago. A quiet hiss filled the chamber as the council watched the last frame freeze, the moment when Serani threw a metal pipe and destroyed the drone. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then the elder in the center leaned forward. "She has returned," he said, voice cold. "And she harbors an alien fugitive. She should have perished in exile." Another elder muttered. "We warned her. We gave her a choice. And now she has made her own," said a third. "She has chosen the outsider." Their voices blended like broken music, sharp, cold, lifeless. They didn't speak about why she helped him. They didn't speak about what she had suffered. They only spoke of rules, of purity, of control. And so they passed judgment. Send the hunters. Bring back the human. Destroy the traitor. Far from the tall towers and icy halls, the junk fields burned red under the light of the twin moons. Serani and Jace had hidden the ship again, but they both knew time was short. The drone's signal had gone out. It would not be long before others came. Fast ones. Armed ones. Jace stood near the cave entrance, checking a device he had repaired using Serani's old parts. It blinked once, then twice. Enemy signals were coming closer. He turned to her. "They know we're here." Serani nodded. She wasn't surprised. The Valexian system worked fast when they wanted someone gone. "We can still run," Jace said. "Get to the ship. Launch now." "Not yet," Serani said. "It's not ready. Fuel cells unstable." Jace looked at her, frustration in his eyes. "Then what do we do?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she moved to the far wall of the cave and opened a hidden panel. Inside was something he hadn't seen before, an old bag filled with strange-looking scrolls and silver cubes. "What's that?" Serani pulled one cube out and turned it slowly in her hand. "My past," she said. And then, for the first time, she told him everything. Years ago, she had been chosen to compete in the Valexian Unity Trials, a rare event where the best minds of the planet gathered to build a project that could help all species. She had worked on a universal translator, one that could learn emotion as well as language. It had worked. The council had smiled. The others had praised her, until she walked on stage to present it. They had seen her size, her strength, her abnormal form. The smiles disappeared. Whispers began. And then one elder had stood and said loudly, "This is not what Valexia should look like." They erased her name from the trial records, destroyed her work, told her she was a mistake. She fled the city that night. Jace listened in silence, his jaw clenched. "They stole everything from you," he said softly. Sharani didn't look at him. She stared at the cube in her hand, fingers tightening. "They didn't just steal," she said. "They made others afraid of me, made me afraid of myself." For a moment, the cave was filled with silence. Then Jace stepped forward and placed his hand gently on her arm. "You built a life out of scraps. You saved me. You fixed a ship with no help. You're not a mistake, Sharani. You're a miracle." Her eyes met his for a second, and in that moment, something inside her shifted. But the peace didn't last. A sudden blast hit the ground outside, shaking the cave walls. They were here. Sharani grabbed her tools and pushed Jace toward the back tunnel. "Go. Use the signal path. Follow the green lights. It leads to the ship. What about you?" "I'll stop them." Jace shook his head. "You'll die." Sharani paused. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were fire. "I've already died once, when they cast me out. This time, I fight." Before he could argue, she stepped outside. The night was filled with flashing lights and the humming sound of hunter drones. 3 Valexian soldiers stood near the entrance, long rifles raised. "Surrender the human," one of them ordered, "and we may let you live." Sharani said nothing. She raised her arms and activated a wave trap she had buried weeks ago. Energy burst from the ground, knocking the soldiers back. She moved fast, her body a blur, striking with strength that came not from anger but from purpose. From love. From the need to protect something worth protecting. Broken chains. The battle outside the cave was brutal and fast. Flashes of light lit up the sky, and smoke rose into the air like fingers reaching for the stars. Sharani moved like a storm. Every step shook the ground. Her fists cracked metal. She didn't need weapons. She was one. Years of living alone had sharpened her instincts, and now her rage had purpose. But she was not invincible. One of the Valexian soldiers fired a pulse weapon from behind a rusted column. It struck her shoulder. Her body jerked, and pain shot down her arm like fire. She stumbled, but didn't fall. She turned, grabbed the soldier by the armor, and slammed him into the wall so hard the stone cracked. Another soldier ran. The third crawled away in fear. Sharani stood there for a moment, breathing hard, smoke curling around her. Then her legs gave out, and she dropped to one knee. She pressed her hand over the wound. The energy blast had torn through muscle. She could feel the warmth of her own blood dripping beneath the armor plate she wore. Her vision swayed for a second. She shook her head, stood up slowly, and turned toward the hidden path behind the cave. She had to reach Jace. Jace was already at the old ship, trying to finish the last system check. His hands moved fast over the controls, reconnecting power lines, adjusting the launch program, scanning fuel levels. He had heard the explosion and seen the sky light up, but Sharani hadn't returned. His heart pounded with fear. He knew what he was supposed to do. She had told him to launch if anything went wrong, to escape. But he couldn't. He looked at the door again, waiting, hoping. Every second that passed felt heavier. Then he saw her. Sharani appeared from between the broken walls, limping, her shoulder burned and bleeding. Her steps were slow, but her eyes were locked on his. He ran to her, catching her as she nearly collapsed. "You're hurt," he said, his voice shaking. "It's nothing," she lied. "You're bleeding," he said, pulling her toward the ship. "Just start the launch." Inside the ship, he sat her down in the co-pilot chair. Her breath was shallow, but she stayed alert, eyes watching the screens, fingers tapping in override codes she remembered from long ago. The engines hummed to life, the air inside warming with power. But the scanner beeped. Jace looked. "They're coming," he whispered. "2 more patrols. They'll be on us in minutes." Sharani didn't move. He stood there for a moment, then did something she didn't expect. He closed the hatch. "What are you doing?" she asked. "They won't stop coming. Not unless we fight back," he said. "You're not a soldier," she said softly. "No," he answered, "but neither were you." Serani looked at him, this small human who had crashed into her world, her silence, her pain. He should have run. He should have left when he had the chance. But here he was, choosing to stay, choosing her. He moved to the back of the ship and grabbed a small energy weapon. It was old and half-damaged, but it still fired. He checked the charge, then looked at her again. "I won't leave you." Serani felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, not pain. Something deeper. No one had ever said those words to her before. Outside, the patrol ships landed. Armored soldiers marched toward the ship, weapons drawn. Serani tried to stand, but her leg failed her. Jace reached her, helping her up. She leaned on him, and they walked to the front of the ship. "We launch now," she said. "What about the engine fault?" he asked. "Doesn't matter. We go." They activated the lift thrusters. Dust exploded from beneath the ship. The ground shook. Soldiers fired at the ship's hull, but the armor held. The engines roared louder as the ship rose into the air. Inside, alarms flashed. The fuel cells glowed red. "Power dropping fast," Jace shouted. Serani's hands flew over the controls. "Reroute secondary cores. That'll burn the system." "Do it anyway." They rose higher. One of the patrol ships tried to follow, but Serani released a cloud of debris from the rear chute. Sharp metal shards, hot and fast. It struck the enemy ship, forcing it to fall back. "We're out of range," Jace said. Serani didn't answer. Her eyes were closing. "Serani." She opened them slowly. "I'm here." Jace turned the ship toward the stars. The edge of Valexian space was close. If they could just make it across, the human fleet might pick up their signal. He reached for her hand. "Stay awake. You can't leave me now." She didn't speak, but she squeezed his hand. Outside the window, the sky turned darker. Peaceful. Serani leaned her head back. "Jace," she whispered. "Yes, thank you for choosing me." And with those quiet words, the ship passed into the unknown. The stars stretched out like a river of light beyond the cracked window of the ship. Jace sat at the pilot's controls, his eyes scanning every warning flashing red across the screen. Heat overflow. Navigation off course. Fuel at 8%. The engine made a high, thin noise every few seconds, like it was begging for rest. They were out of Valexian airspace, but not yet safe. Beside him, Serani lay slumped in the co-pilot seat. Her eyes were closed, skin pale under the glow of emergency lights. Jace had wrapped her shoulder and leg with what little medical supplies they had. He checked her pulse again. It was weak, but steady. That gave him hope. "Hang in there," he whispered. "We're almost out." He had sent a signal an hour ago. A weak distress ping using the human emergency code. He didn't know if anyone would hear it. The stars were wide. The space between systems was cold and silent. Still, he hoped. Behind them, Valexian ships had stopped their chase of the border. Jace knew they didn't want to risk a direct conflict with humans. They were proud, arrogant. They followed rules, even if those rules were twisted by fear and control. Serani had told him once that Valexia feared what it could not control. That was why they had turned on her. Not because she had done something wrong, but because she had grown into something greater than they understood. And now, that same fear had made them let her go. But she was bleeding, tired, fading. Jace left the controls and knelt beside her. Her breathing was slow, lips dry. He took her hand, careful not to squeeze too hard. Her hands were so strong, but now they felt softer. He remembered the first time she had touched his shoulder, telling him not to move when he was still injured. He remembered the way her voice had trembled when she told her story. He remembered everything. "You saved me," he said softly. "Don't make me return the favor just to lose you." Sereni's eyes opened a little. Her voice was barely more than breath. "We're flying." "We are," he said. "You got us out." She tried to sit up, but pain flashed across her face. Jace stopped her gently. "Rest, please. Ship, will it hold?" Jace looked at the engine readout. The numbers were dropping too fast. The ship was holding together, but barely. "Just long enough," he said, though he didn't believe it. Sereni smiled a little. "You always say that." The light flickered again. Outside, the stars twisted. Jace saw a red flash on the radar, something approaching. For a moment, his heart froze. Was it another Valexian patrol? Had they broken the treaty line? Then the screen changed. A human signal. He stared, not daring to believe it. It was a scout cruiser, small, fast, and fully armed. The signal came through, scrambled at first, then clear. "Unknown vessel. Identify. Your ship is not registered. You are leaking plasma." Jace grabbed the radio. "This is Jace Rowan, civilian class. I'm with a Valexian native, non-hostile. She's injured. We need medical help." There was a pause. Then a second voice came, sharper. "You're inside a restricted corridor. What's your reason for crossing Valexian border space?" Jace didn't answer with words. He turned the external camera to show Sereni's unconscious body, her bandages, her wounds. Silence followed. Then the human cruiser responded. "Stay on course. We'll meet you mid-drift. Medical bay is ready." Jace leaned back in the seat, his breath shaking. They had made it. But as he looked at Sereni again, fear returned. Her skin had gone too pale. Her pulse was slowing. "Come on," he said, holding her hand. "You're almost there." Her eyes opened again, just a slutter. "You'll be safe now," she whispered. "We'll be safe," he corrected her. "Together." "I don't fit in there." Jace leaned close. "You fit with me." Her eyes glistened. For someone like Sereni, tears were rare. She had learned to hold pain deep inside. But now, with everything broken and everything ahead unknown, she let go. "No one ever chose me," she said. "Not until you." "I didn't choose you out of pity," he said. "I chose you because you were the only one who didn't run." The ship rocked gently as the human cruiser attached itself. A soft hiss signaled the docking latch. Medics were already waiting outside the door. Jace opened it and waved them in. They rushed to Sereni's side, lifting her carefully. She was unconscious again. As they carried her out, one of the medics turned to Jace and said, "What is she?" Jace looked at Sereni's still face and smiled. "A hero," he said, "and maybe the best soul I've ever met." The medic didn't argue, just nodded, and moved quickly. Jace followed them into the bright corridor of the human ship. The doors closed behind him, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he breathed without fear. They were safe. But their story was just beginning. The one who chose her. The human world was unlike anything Sereni had ever imagined. The skies above Earth were soft and open, not sharp like Valexia's. The buildings stood tall, but not cold. People walked without fear, without the weight of constant judgment. The air didn't bite. The light didn't blind. For someone who had grown up in silence and shadows, it felt like stepping into a dream she never thought she was allowed to have. She had spent weeks in the medical center aboard the cruiser after Jace brought her in. Her wounds were deep, her body tired. She had nearly slipped away more than once. But every time the pain grew too loud, every time the darkness pulled at her, she heard his voice. Calm, warm, determined. "You're not done yet. Stay with me." So she did. When she opened her eyes for the first time after surgery, Jace was there, holding her hand, smiling in that way only he could. Not with pity, not with fear, just joy. "We made it," he whispered. Sereni didn't answer right away. She only nodded and let the warmth of his hand remind her she was real, that she had survived. Not as a mistake, not as a monster, but as herself. After she recovered, they brought her to Earth. At first, there were questions. Human officials didn't know what to do with her. They asked about her species, her past, her biology. Scientists leaned in too close, some of them more curious about her bones than her thoughts. But Jace stayed beside her through it all. And slowly, people began to understand. She wasn't dangerous. She was brilliant. When they saw the technology she had built from nothing, when they heard her speak about her work with universal language, when they saw the designs she'd drawn from memory, they stopped seeing her body and started seeing her mind. The Human Science Council offered her a position, not just as a guest, as a lead. Serani had never been asked to lead before. She didn't say yes right away. The fear still lived inside her, the voice of the Valexian elders whispering that she didn't belong anywhere. But Jace reminded her again. They don't get to decide who you are anymore. You do. So she said yes. The first time she stood on stage to present her research, her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear her own voice. The room was full of humans, scientists, explorers, engineers. She was bigger than all of them. Her skin still carried the scars from her exile. But they didn't laugh. They listened. And when she finished, they clapped. Not out of politeness, out of respect. After the event, Jace joined her backstage. You did it, he said. Serani looked at him, quiet for a moment. We did. The years that followed moved fast. Her designs were used in human missions across galaxies. Her name began to appear in papers, in lectures, in stories. Some people still stared when she walked into a room. But now, they stared with awe, not fear. One evening, Jace led her through the halls of a great human academy. It was quiet, filled with long glass windows and old stone. She looked around, confused. Where are we going? He smiled but said nothing. They reached a room filled with seats and lights. A stage stood at the center, and above it, a banner glowed softly, honoring the mind that changed first contact forever. Serani stood still. Her name was on the screen. Below it, humans waited, cameras ready, lights pointed toward the stage. Jace turned to her. They asked me to introduce you. Serani blinked. Me? Yes, not because you're strange, not because they're curious, because they admire you, and they want to know who you really are. Serani looked at the stage. She remembered the last time she stood before a crowd, back on Valexia. She had held her invention in her hands. She had believed that brilliance would be enough. But they hadn't listened. They had looked at her and only seen what she wasn't. But these people, they saw what she was. She stepped onto the stage. The room went quiet. Jace stood at the podium and began to speak. A few years ago, I crashed on a planet where no one survives alone. I should have died there. But someone found me. Someone strong. Someone smart. Someone the world had thrown away. He looked at Serani, and his voice grew soft. She gave me food. She gave me hope. And even when it meant risking everything, she chose to protect me. Not because she had to, but because it was right. He turned to the crowd. I want you to meet my savior, my friend, the reason I believe in something better. The lights dimmed. Serani stepped forward. The crowd rose. And for the first time in her life, no one looked away.